Normally, I'd have a witty remark for the intro of these podcasts, but the last 2 weeks of MotoGP have been so drab, I'm not going to make an effort either. Welcome back to Motorsport 101.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yes, welcome to episode 547 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison, and, we got to get this shit out of the way before we get to the more fun stuff, I guess you can say, here on this podcast. First of all, a quick clarification. We didn't have an episode last week. Sincere apologies for that. That was on me. I take full accountability for this one. My computer had a devastating BSOD. Turns out part of our RAM was actually faulty. And that's what was causing all the random crashes and just unable to... eventually, it got so bad we were just unable to boot the damn thing. So that was just a non-starter. We had to reinstall Windows and unscrew a bunch of parts, just trying to eliminate what the problems might be, and we eventually figured out it was the RAM in the end. So fresh install of Windows, just taking out the faulty RAM, and now we're actually working again. We've not actually had a random crash since, so it looks like we've actually fixed the problem, more than we even anticipated we would, which is great. So yeah, we're back and going, but not that really matters anyway, because I'm actually recording this on my MacBook for the first time, which is kind of wild, because me and Cameron...
One of us.
My co-host, Mr. Cameron Buckley, has always been a Mac user, totally not biased in terms of product usage, shall we say, Cameron?
Yes, well, for those who don't know, by night I am Motorsport 101 contributor. During the daytime, I'm slinging fruit.
He is slinging fruit, and not just in the last two MotoGP races, in general.
Yes, no, this is a fresh apple rather than a rotten apple, which is what I'd be throwing on the track in Japan after that processional, boring-ass race that I woke up for.
Yeah.
Why did I wake up for it? Well, it was an entire waste of everyone's time.
I feel bad for you because, that was like a 1 a.m. Eastern Standard start. That's a really awkward time. For us, it was 6 a.m. and it was 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, that's not too bad for a morning start. But I got up at 9 because I was like, I'm not gonna I'll take the line and watch this afterwards and just avoid the internet.
Pretty much, yeah. I took a nap before the race, woke up, and then realized I should have stayed in bed.
Yeah, pretty much. We can't really beat around the bush or try to hide from this one. The last two MotoGP rounds have generally stunk. I promise you, that wasn't the reason we didn't have an episode last week, but if we're being completely honest, it's like the Americans. I'll use an American analogy to help out our foreign listeners here, given that I'm the only British influence we have left here. It's a bit like adding water to try and top up the Kool-Aid when it came to trying to put together a cognitive script for last week's episode.
Eventually you top it up enough, you can't even taste the Kool-Aid anymore.
No, it's just
straight water.
It's just water with a different color at that point. So if anything, it's been kind of a blessing that Japan happened in a sense where we've now got two races to talk about, and even then, most of the talk is probably going to be something about what happened off the track, because as we record this on October the 9th, 2024, there's been quite a big story to come out of Moto 2, of all places. We don't normally say that on this show, but it involves a rider's first MotoGP win being tainted by seemingly another Gresini PR gaffe, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the recording. But yeah, I'm Dre Harrison, in case you didn't know already. He's Cameron Buckley. Glad you can join us as ever. We're gonna keep Indonesia to the Keeping It 101 segment here before we roll the musical intro and sound all fancy with it. Mostly because there just really wasn't an awful lot to talk about coming out of that weekend. Jorge Martin inhibited Bozo Jean in the sprint again, tucked the front at turn 15, lost the sprint. Bagnaia won the sprint. Bagnaia took maximum points. Gap goes down to 10. Grand Prix, Jorge Martin remembers he's Jorge Martin in Indonesia, actually finishes the job this time and wins his first Grand Prix in 4 months. Nice surprise, Pedro Acosta on the podium in second, ahead of Pecco Bagnaia in third. Claims he had another dud Michelin tyre at the start, which bogged him down. But
when in doubt, blame the Michelin.
Bagnaia's got a bit of a knack for that, hasn't he? Where he'll just blame the... if in doubt, he'll just blame Michelin and just crack on from there. But it really was a race of attrition because only 12 bikes crossed the line by the time it was all said and done. Mostly due to a bunch of incidents. I mean, you saw it, Cam. Like, Jack Miller took out 4 dudes, including himself, on the first corner, basically.
Yeah, if we were to go to... if we were to play Where's the Bozo Gene for race day, it would have been Jack Miller going bowling on the first lap. What a just horrible, horrible incident. Extend that to Marc Marquez's engine as well as a result of a upgraded flywheel on his Ducati. Spun a little too fast, went kaboom.
Yeah, we didn't find this out until a week later after Japan, and credit to Simon Patterson at the race who originally reported the story, but it turns out that they tried an upgraded, slightly heavier flywheel in the GP23s, and as Cam alluded to, they were causing the engine to over-rev, and an over-revving engine is going to increase stress and temperature, and it went kaboom in Marc Marquez's bike. It caused it to come down with a mild case of explosions, and he had to park it, which was unfortunate. So he was out. Fabio Di Gianantonio crashed. Bez nearly did the same himself. It was a dirty, dry, greasy track in Indonesia in general. Enea Bastianini was the big mover once again, going for another one of his late race surges until he tucked the front and crashed at turn 1, which pretty much meant his championship campaign was over as well. Right there and then, it almost magically becomes a 2-horse race again, Cam.
It kind of feels like it always was, given that Bastianini is the greatest rider on the planet for the last 33% of every race.
Yes.
And in this case, he wasn't. He set the fastest lap and immediately crashed.
Yep.
Yeah, one of those things, like, you could see it coming, and, like, the track surface was so rough in Indonesia all weekend. It started off really poor, and it didn't get all that much better. Marc Marquez had a hell of a time, was crashing left and right, crashed twice in Q2.
Yeah.
Didn't get along with it. If you went offline, you were going to have a bad time pretty much as a matter of law.
Yeah, just as a matter of principle, really. Just if you were offline, you were in trouble, big trouble, and it showed as the race went on. Like I said, only 12 dudes made it over the line by the time it was all said and done. It was just one of those weekends. It was one of those weekends where, if you read my DRR on it last week, that I was cranky when I wrote that sucker the week that it happened, because I was just like, you know what, I'm just fed up with all of this shit right now. Like, the track was shit.
Don't post angry. Dre posted angry.
I have a rule, like, trying not to post angry and let my emotions get in the way of these things when I write. This was an exception because I was just fucked off with MotoGP at that point after that race.
The 2 or 3 exceptions per year that we have to that rule, extremely entertaining on this website.
Oh, yeah. I was just like, fuck this, fuck all of this. I was just so ticked off with just everything. The track was shit. They blatantly lied about the attendance figures because they claimed 15,000 rolled up on Friday, and I'm like, where? Where in Mandalika was there 15,000 people inside that track on Friday?
When I see it, I'll let you know.
It was empty until Sunday morning, and even then, the only grandstand that even looked half busy was the main one on the start-finish straight. All the other ones were derelict. Indonesia does not care about this race. Apparently, the ticket prices were north of £100 each for a
not good, for a subpar track.
Yeah, for a subpar track in a country that, and I'm sorry to be and this might sound a little bit culturally negative, but not a particularly rich country in that instance. I mean, it's not the first time we've talked about ticket sale problems in this sport. Silverstone, Mugello have had these problems in years past. Bike racing fans do not have the budget that Formula One fans do. F1 fans have proven they will pay through the nose for a ticket for certain Grand Prix. Bike racing's crowd is not that. I promise you. Look at Mugello last year when that was Valentino Rossi's Hall of Fame retirement weekend, and they had 25,000 on Saturday, like 45,000 for the race. Like, that was for Mugello. That is appalling. Like, it was a bit better last year because I think fans are starting to come round on Bagnaia's dominance and him winning. He's clearly gained a lot of fans in the last year, which is good to see. I'm glad it wasn't just a sea of yellow like it normally has been at Mugello every year. It was actually a lot of red on there, and that was good. But Indonesia was not ready. Basically, I think they priced out a lot of the locals, and you could tell when you watched it because there was no camera shots to any other grandstand besides the one on the start-finish straight, which wasn't good. The track was dirty. It wasn't in a particularly good condition. The conditions itself, I mean, it was 62 degrees on track. It was scorching. You could fry an egg on that shit, given how hot it was, and that just made for bad racing in general, and you know, just really high-risk stuff.
Yeah, if you push behind someone else with the track in that kind of state, I mean, your tire pressure is just going to go up, and you're going to be riding on a balloon. And we know if the Ducati has one flaw left amid its arsenal of world-destroying weapons, it still tucks the front if you go over on the front tire.
Yep, it will absolutely do that, and we saw it with Bagnaia, and we saw it with DG Antonio. Or, as Ghost Raptor points out in our chat, one of our Patreon backers, shout out to him, or you can just break your rim, like what apparently happened to Pedro Acosta, because he was under investigation when he finished that race in second for a potential tire pressure allegation. Turns out his rim was broken, and that's why I don't know, I'm on Mac, like you doing the finger pointing. I was doing the inverted commas like finger pointing, and a bunch of balloons just showed up. I thought that was quite funny. It just kind of took the seriousness out of my point for a second there, that because of that tire pressure situation, because his rim was broken, it quote wasn't a violation, and then we had to wait 2 days for the result to be official because we didn't find out until Tuesday that Nakagami's breach was genuine and the Binder's wasn't. So even then, I couldn't even call the result final until Tuesday morning because of the, quote, nature of the tire pressure test. Whatever the fuck that means.
Dre, are you beginning to understand why I have penciled in Michelin for the Golden Cock? Are you starting to see the vision?
I'm not going to lie to you. It is starting to feel that way because we talked about it impromptuly last time out. We did an energy episode in Misano, and we kind of went into a tangent about it because we were both just so pissed off that the fact that we have a tyre, it got universally glowing reviews during the Misano test. The riders loved it. They wanted to see it put in and brought forward. We thought we might actually have a chance of being able to speak to race each other because it was more like the old Bridgestone fronts that actually better communicated to the rider when they were overheating and when they were about to lose it.
Yeah, the tires that can deal with the sheer physical force that these bikes are generating with all of their aero, with their ride height devices, with the amount of power that they're generating now, because all those devices enable you to use the power, and we're leaving it on the shelf, and we're going to keep using this completely unfit for purpose tire for another 18 months.
Yeah. Because apparently they only gave them 30 minutes of actual testing on this tyre during the Misano test, and then Michelin came out and claimed, we can't put it forward yet because we haven't had enough testing. Well, what's the fucking point if you're only going to give them half an hour to use it? Like, what were you honestly expecting here? Like, I do not for the life of me. We
tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
It's just so stupid. And then we've had these last two races since that declaration that wasn't going to be a thing. And now we wonder why we're so mad at this goddamn sport at the moment, because we've had back-to-back clunkers. And yeah, like even the Misano races were only good via proxy. Really, they were good for not actual on-track quality reasons. Like Misano 1 was a rain-affected race with a shock result. Race 2 had a dramatic finish that was only really possible because of these tyres, and not in a good way either.
No.
So here we are. So now we're sitting down to review these two crummy races instead. I mean, should we talk a bit about Japan now? I think we've done enough about Indonesia, really.
Yeah, I mean, talk about Japan. I mean, as far as on track, Pecco Bagnaia, him. All right. Well, next week you can find us on, yeah, pretty much. Really on track. Not a lot happened in the top class. Probably the biggest story was out of qualifying, as Marc Marquez looked like he was going to be on pole, and then he wasn't because of a track limits violation, completely valid track limits violation.
He was absolutely off. That's not what we're angry about. Like, as much as we are both Marquez fans and we'd love to see him on pole position and actually get a qualifying lap down, but yeah, we looked at the replay, there was no doubt about it. He absolutely did put two wheels on the green coming out of turn 4. That wasn't the issue. The issue was because it was a software glitch, they couldn't report that the lap had been taken away until several minutes after the session was already over. And because of that, Mike Webb, the race director at MotoGP, had to later come out and explain, we had to enter it in manually because normally the sensor goes off and it's all done automatically. So it's a quick turnaround. They can broadcast it to the rider and tell the teams this lap got taken away, track limits instantaneously. Fine, not a problem. 99 times out of 100, this works absolutely flawlessly and it's not a problem. This was the one time it didn't work.
Yep, and it was with a few minutes to go in the session. Mark thinks he's good, and then suddenly his pole-winning time is struck off. And the worst thing is, even if he hadn't extended that corner, he was on pole by a margin, too. About 3/10 of the field. Only 42 on the board. Oh, it was so close. Because he thinks he's good, he doesn't go for another push lap. And then it gets struck off, and he started, what, 8th?
He started 9th. Yeah.
9th.
Started 9th, which I believe makes Marquez, I want to say, 4 of 16 for front row starts this year in qualifying on that GP23.
It's either real good or real bad.
Yeah, and most of the time it's been bad. By Marquez's normally inhuman standards. Look, we ain't got an issue with this, really. It's just frustrating. Software glitches happen. Errors happen with technology. I'm not mad at them for that. It's just one of those unfortunate things that one thing led to another. We did get bitchy Marquez in the comments, though, because he went to MotoGP social media site, saw the news about his lap being taken away and put, well, fair enough, but the reporting times are the reporting times of a clock emoji in the comments. Marquez was not happy.
Neither was Frankie Carchecki, his crew chief on the socials, who tweeted mad about it. And as Ghost Raptor in the comments says, he still has that screenshotted because he saw that live. It then immediately got deleted, as I'm sure someone tapped him on the shoulder and went, "Yeah, buddy, you might want to take that down." Besides tweeting mad about it, this gave us Pedro Acosta on pole.
The third youngest rider in MotoGP Premier Class history to ever score a pole position. I believe he's like 120 odd days older than Fabio Quartararo, who's the all-time record holder. Only Quartararo and Marquez have ever qualified on pole in the MotoGP era since 01, who were younger than Acosta to do it. First of many for the Baby Shark, as Raptor quite rightly points out. Yeah, I mean, KTM had a very fast bike this week, and this was the fastest KTM has looked probably all season.
Yes, over a lap. Because unfortunately that lap he spent more time horizontal to the racing line than actually on it.
Making shapes, Pedro Acosta.
But Brad Binder as well. He went into a corner during the sprint, and the front tire was pointed one way, the bike was pointed another, and then he's hanging off of it another direction.
Yeah, it was like he was riding a speedway bike.
Honestly.
On a Grand Prix track, it was wild. So, yeah, Acosta qualifies on pole. Marc Marquez is down in ninth. Bagnaia is in second. And Jorge Martin, who crashed in qualifying as well. First time all season he's had to qualify outside of the top 10 all year. He had to start in 11th. But Martin is just such a dynamite starter these days. Now, he was in the sprint, he was P5 by turn 2. Another outrageous Jorge Martin start to set up what was inevitably fourth in the sprint, as Bagnaia won that pretty comfortably in the end, with Marquez and Bastianini beating 7 bells out of each other during the sprint. With
that was the best on-track racing we've had all year. Half a lap of pure one-on-one combat.
Yeah, and Bastianini won the war on that one. He got second. Marquez going from 9th to 3rd. He'd do so again in the Grand Prix, going from 9th to 3rd. Yeah, it's a lot, to say the least. And yeah, like Jorge Martin did it again in the Grand Prix, started 11th, tore through the early field, got to second, didn't have enough to chase down Bagnaia.
Notice how in the actual races we're not mentioning Pedro Acosta. Well, it is manifested. Baby's first bozo gene.
Yeah, I joked about this a little bit on the DRR for this review, right, where the tagline at the top is, Pedro, we have to awaken your bozo blood. Because
it happened, you know. Fair plays to him in the sprint. He was riding out of his mind, actually had a reasonably healthy gap to Bagnaia, but you could see the shapes he was making on the bike. It was kind of a matter of time, and
it was not
manifested.
It was not sustainable. No, man, that's not a sustainable way to ride a motorcycle, as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, that's exactly how it turned out in the end. He eventually crashed it. And shout out to our old friend and my old radio husband, Lewis Sotheby, in the commentary box, who said that Acosta rode a flawless race 2 corners before he crashed.
Oh, no. I was watching the other commentary because the one that we had previously available was operating about 2 frames per minute. Forget second. And saw it. Oh, he's immediately down.
Yep. But it was just like, not again, Pedro. And this is the problem. Pedro Acosta is the league leader in crashes this year. And I'm not going to tear into him for it, because he's a rookie at the end of the day, and this is an inevitable part of being a rookie in this top class. We're talking about a 20-year-old man on a 320 horsepower bike who is pushing it to its limit and beyond. There is going to be errors in this learning process.
In terms of raw pace, is smacking the taste out of every other KTM rider's mouth.
Yeah.
Including Brad Binder, who had a good weekend, but Acosta was cooking him.
Yeah, Acosta had a bike that would have been a podium sitter at worst. He was incredibly fast all weekend. The best he's looked in MotoGP so far, comfortably. But he crashed in the sprint and he crashed in the Grand Prix on lap 2. Tucked the front of Victory Corner, and when down he went. You've desecrated Victory Corner with your presence, and he was hit with a lightning bolt. Unfortunately,
that's about as much fun as we can have describing the actual racing, because once that actually happened, once Acosta went down in the race, well, Martin is in second. Mark and Bastianini fight each other for third. Not much of a fight, because today on race day, Mark was able to hold him off. Not a lot happened.
No, it was processional after that. Martin...
It was 7/10 gaps from there on down, sometimes bigger.
Yeah, Martin openly admitted after the race he didn't have the pace or the tyre to launch a serious attack at Bagnaia, and at the end he was like, I'll just take these 20 points and get out of here. He took the damage limitation job and got out of the Dodge. Even Marc Marquez called it super boring after the race.
Mr. Excitement.
Mr. Excitement was like, lad, let me take a snooze on this one. I see Jason in the chat saying he's Jin Kazama. No, Pedro Acosta is Reina Mishima at the end of Tekken 8, where you find out, oh, surprise, turns out she had the devil gene too. What a shock. As if the whole story wasn't angling that way. Oh my god, what a twist. But yes, like, basically... that is it's baby's first bozo gene, as the chat quite rightly said, and it's a shame because Acosta was meant to be the potential game changer in this race for what was yet more GP23/24 domination. As Matt Oxley quite rightly pointed out in his Motorsport magazine piece this week, always worth your time in terms of reading. Man said straight up, Acosta's got more non-Ducati podiums in the field than anyone else right now. I think he's got 4 this season, 4 podium finishes. Yeah. No one not on a Ducati has more. I think the only other man with multiple is Maverick Vinales, and I think Vinales only has 1. So that just kind of says it all about the state of play in the field right now, and the fact that Acosta is the only one that can break through and potentially intercept the GP24 besides Mark on the 23, really. That's the state of play.
And if we saw anything this weekend, I mean, the 23s were just straight up outgunned. 24s with that kind of performance backstep, because Mark had clear track, and this, we know he loves riding around here. He was making shapes, as he often does, and he got blown away by Bagnaia and Martin at the front. There's nothing he could do.
That will probably happen for the rest of the year now.
I can't see anything but if Ducati do not sweep every remaining points-paying session, I would be shocked. It's got to take something like rain, but even then in the rain's got Marc Marquez.
Yeah, it's just one of them things. I think the performance rollback, Ducati not following through on their promise to continue to support the GP23 in large quantities, which they were always going to break that promise. They have no reason to bump up the 23.
I don't know why they bothered to make that, making that promise and then not through on it. It's just unnecessary. Because we're talking about visible upgrades. I mean, it's not hard. We can see them. For stuff like that, but I just don't see going forward anyone who's going to consistently challenge them, because Acosta can pull a lap out of a hat. The kid can ride, but over in race distance, the 24 is just so impervious unless the bozo gene manifests.
Exactly. It is what it is.
The only flaw is the squishy bit holding onto the handlebars,
which has been the story of the year, pretty much. It's been who makes the least amount of mistakes, and this was another weekend where the answer once again was Jorge Martin. In this case, and this time it was his ace in the hole. His qualifying was what let him down on this occasion, and leaked points he probably didn't have to leak. But the sport takes a week off now between now and Phillip Island in a week's time for the second set of flyaway triple headers. We got 4 races to go in this championship. I wish I was more excited about what is a 10-point championship right now, because it feels like you're waiting for the next mistake to happen.
It's not happening on track, is it?
No,
it's not happening in terms of the single combat that we're so used to with MotoGP. It's happening from mistakes in qualifying, mistakes off the line, mistakes in race trim. This weekend, it was Bagnaia who took maximum points. Last weekend, Bagnaia takes the points in the sprint. Martin swings back in the race. But it's never them actually riding against each other.
When was the last time Bagnaia and Martin had a genuine ding-dong for the win? Catalunya?
Probably.
Catalunya. 4 months ago. Yeah. That says it all. It's a game. It's like you're watching a game of chess. There's nothing wrong with chess. I'm sure it's fascinating to watch to the people that are interested in it. But this is not why we watch MotoGP. We don't watch it waiting for the accidents to happen. That's what TNT thinks is what promoting the sport should be like. Because every time you see a montage of it, it's somebody crashing. I wish it wasn't like that, but unfortunately, that's kind of what this season has been at times. And that is frustrating to talk about in a sense. Now, we got to talk about the other big story that's come out in the last 24 hours, and that is what's happened in Moto 2. Now, I need a little bit to explain some exposition here. Moto 2, the good news was first-time winner. Manuel Gonzalez won his first ever Moto 2 race, long overdue. The guy's a very, very quick rider. It was a restarted Moto 2 race because the rain came down right at the start. We don't do flag-to-flags in Moto 2, so they had to red flag it due to conditions and start over. Wet race, got going again. Manuel Gonzalez wins. Ayagura second. Sergio Garcia down in 14th. Agura now has a 60-point lead in the championship. He can win it all next time out in Phillip Island. I mean, the season's been completely turned on its head in Moto 2.
It's almost like it's evolved beyond the Agura surprise. It's now the Agura expectation. He's just been putting work in, and Garcia has completely imploded down the stretch here.
Yeah, massively. He is just he's had the shoulder injury and he's never recovered from it. Unfortunately, he's just in too much pain to be able to handle it and ride like his normal self. It's like he's riding within himself, and it's completely derailed what could have been a championship campaign. And Agura has finally started punishing him for it again and again and again, and now he's got a match point headed into Phillip Island in next week's time. It's a long shot. He has to outscore Garcia by 15, but the way Garcia's riding right now, it's actually reasonably likely that could actually happen.
That's the thing, like, even if Agura starts to blow it from here, you question whether Garcia could even score enough points to overturn that advantage.
Is Garcia even going to score 60 points between now and the end of the year?
It doesn't feel like it on the current trend. It really doesn't.
And the rest of the big contenders are all beating each other up. Jake Dixon, Tony Arbolino's back to some degree of form. Alonso Lopez, Fermin Aldeguer, they're all just tripping over each other, trying to take big points out, and no one can land a big blow on Agura. He's just been that good. Anyway, since then, not that many people were paying too much attention to it at the time, but in the build-up to this race, Manuel Gonzalez was wearing a headband. He was wearing one of those classic Japanese style headbands that a lot of foreigners that go to Japan will wear to reference Japan. Now, this is not inherently a bad thing, and I'll explain why in a little bit, but it's something that is associated with the imperial era of Japan in the 1930s and 40s, around there, pre-World War II. And for those who don't know, the Gresini Moto 2 team is sponsored by QJ Motor, a big new up-and-coming Chinese biking manufacturer, who are the title sponsor of the Gresini team. Now, the key word here is Chinese. Now, anyone who knows their history knows that the imperial era of Japan committed some heinous atrocities towards China pre-World War II. China does not take kindly to any imperial symbolism, and this was one of those examples. And last night, QJ Motor took down all association with Manuel Gonzalez on their website, and released a statement that essentially was translated to, "We are offended, we don't like this, sack the rider or we're pulling the funding from the team." A huge statement. Gresini has since responded today by saying, "We don't know what you're talking about. This statement doesn't exist." No, it absolutely exists. It was published on their website. It was sent to all of the world's press. I got it from a good source myself last night, so I kind of had a heads up that this story was coming. I just didn't think it would get the traction that it's gotten this morning, and I'll tell you why that pisses me off so much very, very soon. But so Gonzalez has worn this Hachimaki headband. I was looking for the name and I found it in my notes. It was the Hachimaki headband, for those who don't know. I mean, Cam, what have you made of the situation as it's developed in the last, 12 hours or so?
It's honestly, like, I'm only just now right now getting some of the details on it, and it just it's a whole mess. I mean, this is second time in less than 6 months where Gresini has done something that's, how we say, tone deaf, and that's at best.
Yeah, it's not a good look at all. It'll be one thing if this was a team out of nowhere. This has happened twice with Gresini in the space of a year. For those who don't know what I'm referring to, because unfortunately a lot of the mainstream media did not touch this when it happened at the German Grand Prix back at the Sachsenring before the summer break. During that race weekend, as a joke to respond to the rumours that Lewis Hamilton may or may not have been interested, and turns out it looks like he was, according to Greg Maffei at Formula One's CEO or owner via Liberty Media, the CEO of Liberty. In response to the talk that Lewis Hamilton was interested in potentially buying Gresini, they responded by photoshopping huge dreadlocks on their white members of staff in the team. Tone deaf at best, flat out racist at worst. It was a classic case of cultural appropriation. And sadly, at least in my opinion, it was barely picked up upon by a lot of the mainstream big players, including my own at Autosport. I make no bones about admitting it. Like, you could go out of your way and search for it yourself. I mean, I'm not telling any company secrets here when I say it. The story was not covered by them. It wasn't covered by most sites, unfortunately. It was only talked about on social media by a couple of the big players. I know Matt Oxley did quite late. I know David Emmett did to a degree as well. People with a conscience. I was disappointed in certain others for not doing so. But yeah, it was a story that kind of went under the radar to a lot of people. Now, I suspect, given the nature of the fact it's a big company that's released a public press release and public statement on the matter, is what's led to this story gaining so much more traction by comparison. I mean, we're talking about threatening to cut a rider's job. That's a big deal, especially when he's just won his first Grand Prix. Manuel Gonzalez is no slouch. He's a former World Supersport 300 champion. He's a great talent, and his career might be in some serious jeopardy here. And I wanted to get some more context on this. So I reached out to a friend who covers Japanese motorsports and is much more intertwined with Japanese culture than we are. They asked to remain anonymous, and I'll respect that wish. But this is what they said on the matter. So it's a little bit wordy, so bear with me here. Quote, "That seems a bit harsh, especially the heavily associated with the World War II military part." This was a tweet that Simon Patterson at the race put out there in regard to it, just for full disclosure. "Sounds more to me like someone wants to stir up some shit and found a good reason to do so. Yes, kamikaze pilots in World War II wore them, and yes, some nationalists are wearing them, but those headbands are a very common sight at athletic youth meets, either by the students themselves or their cheerleaders. Some students are even wearing them while studying, and they are like the most dream races or the most cliche thing foreigners can wear at a sporting events. BMW folk wore it at the Super GT Cross DTM Dream Race. You see F1 folks wear it at the Japanese Grand Prix. You see Toyota folks, like the mechanics, wearing it at Le Mans, etc. Now, I don't know what characters the dude was having on his headband. Brackets, as there's a quick interjection here, we can confirm now it was number 1, but in Japanese text. There was nothing offensive written on the headband itself. Yeah. It was translated to suit number 1. I want to make that clear distinction here that Manuel Gonzalez has clearly shown no intention of trying to offend anybody. He wasn't directly referencing anything to do with Imperial era Japan. I just want to make that completely clear before I carry on. Just wanted to make that point. And if they perhaps have an association that warrants this, but by default, this is not nearly as bad as using the Kyokujitsuki, the Imperial Rising Sun flag. You may know that because Johann Zarco used to race with that helmet design for many years in MotoGP until Japanese people pointed out the significance and he stopped using it. So if anyone's saying, oh, well, what about Johann Zarco? No, the Japanese kicked up a stink about this too. I need to point this out. But that being said, if your main sponsor is Chinese, you should probably be a bit more careful, is what this person said in response when I reached out to them and asked about it to provide some context. Now, as said, Manuel Gonzalez, I think it's pretty clear and pretty simple to give him the benefit of the doubt. He clearly was not trying to offend anybody in doing this, and I will comfortably say this: he should absolutely not be fired for this. This is not, in my opinion, something that would warrant a rider losing their job. At the absolute harshest, it's a slightly ignorant thing to do. The issue I have is with Grassini, who are managing these riders, that are managing their team, and we know has a Chinese company as a title sponsor. The first question I'd be asking is, did you think this was worth it? Because
doesn't feel like it now.
Because if others have made this point, and I will make the same point here. If you are accepting Chinese companies' money to be your title sponsor in MotoGP or Moto2 or whatever class it is, whether you like it or not, pardon me, whether you like it or not, you've got to play by their rules. And do I think this is an overreaction? Yes, I do.
Yeah, because like we see it, and like, and this person talked about it. It's like been a staple in the Toyota garage at Le Mans every year, pretty much since they came back with the hybrids in 2012. It's a common sight every time we go to a Japanese race. We see it, I mean, as a Super GT fan, see it in Super GT all the time. Fans, teams, sponsors, everyone.
It's the just wearing the headband is not offensive necessarily in of itself.
No, but it feels like if you're accepting someone's money, you should probably read the fine print.
Yes, it may reference something that if you are Chinese or if you're from that country, you know, or you're of that heritage, then clearly it is something that is a bit more sensitive to you than opposed to everybody else. And like I said, if you're taking their money, you're going to have to play by their rules. There is no getting around it. Like, this is the nature of biking development and the biking market. China is a huge superpower economically and globally. We all know that already as it is. They are expanding into bikes now. There's a bunch of Chinese startup companies that are building motorcycles and are trying to put their stamp on an already established market. And that means drifting into racing as well as a sponsor would do. They sponsor multiple biking companies. They sponsor multiple teams. They're in World Superbike's paddock as well as MotoGP's right now. They're up-and-comers, and this is one of the ways to get their names out there. They are sponsoring a high-profile, winning Moto2 team. That's what you do. And, well, if you're going to pull off stunts like this, you know, in which, in my opinion, are zero-sum games, like, what do you gain by using a headband that could piss off your main title sponsor? A couple of cute pictures on the official photography pages? Some nice social media clips briefly? Like, because if you think that is worth it when it comes to pissing off a sponsor to the point where they're threatening to pull their funding or sack a rider, it absolutely was not worth it. At least that's how I look at it anyway.
I just don't see how, like, this reaction just came out of the blue this morning with this press release where everyone's just like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is because I do think this is an overreaction from QJ Motor.
Like, what does the internal communication have to look like between all parties involved?
There hasn't been any, because Grassini's claiming the whole thing doesn't exist. There has been no communication, clearly.
We've got one side claiming the statement doesn't exist, and the statement which does exist is saying, sack this rider or we're gone. There's a bit of a disconnect there.
It's one extreme versus the other. And like I said, I need to make this abundantly clear. I do not agree that Manuel Gonzalez should be fired for this. Absolutely not. No. This is not inherently a super offensive gesture, and you can clearly tell Gonzalez has not tried to offend anybody or not tried to piss anybody off. This, in my opinion, is an overreaction from QJ Motor, but at the same time, Grassini's got to know better, especially when you consider you've already had one fuck-up on this earlier this year. One that could have easily been deemed as racist by many more people if it was a more high-profile incident, which it wasn't. They got away with it, really, in the grand scheme of things. And from what I've been told by my sources, Grassini were very ignorant as to how that Hamilton incident went down, in terms of there was no public apology, there was no acknowledgement that they fucked up, there was no public statement acknowledging what had gone wrong. The post is still up to this.
It was just swept under the rug and moved on.
Which, given it indirectly involved Lewis Hamilton, I don't think they know how lucky they were that they got away with that, because if the Hamilton fans got a hold of that, it would have been a nuclear bomb in their factory.
Yeah, the mushroom cloud would have still been visible.
Yeah, they got away with it by all accounts. I know a lot of the biking people that I know that noticed that laid into them. But in the grand scheme of things, they ultimately got away with it on that one, and they were very lucky to do so. And now they've done it again. And unfortunately, what I don't like about this story is that, number one, that first incident was largely ignored. And certain people really should know better, especially when they represent very large media sites and claim to be the arbiters on social media of all things righteous and good. And when they see a racist story drop in front of their mailbox, they just completely ignore it. And at the same time, on top of that, bike racing is even more antiquated than Formula One is when it comes to how their fan bases act and how they get down. And that's not a good look. And unfortunately, for Grassini, this is the second time they've done this now. And any benefit of the doubt you would give them for the first one is now blown out by this one, because they've done it again. You might have indirectly cost the rider his job, or you're about to lose your title sponsor.
Yeah, one of the two is almost certainly happening at this point. It feels like the strength of that statement, they are way past negotiating.
Yeah. They're gonna, Grassini might have to grovel and beg and apologize and potentially do something to try and fix this bridge, because by the sounds of it, QJ Motor are not fucking around. If it gets to the point where they're demanding a rider be sacked and they've stripped any association with them from them as a brand, you have fucked up. Because no company wants to do that willingly unless they feel like they have to, because the value is in the rider. That's their marketable asset, especially given he won a race 3 days ago. First Grand Prix win. Huge deal. Big career milestone. God.
Feels like equivalent to Chase Elliott winning his first race, and then the CEO of the sport gets pulled over for drunk driving in the Hamptons.
Yeah. It's a huge fuck up, and it circles back to the point that we've mentioned from day one. If you're going to take a big title sponsor's money, you have to play by their rules. Whether you like it or not, because this is what I don't like about this, because I've had people argue about this and say, well, what about Zarco? What about Valentino Rossi wearing this headband? What about this? What about that? I fucking hate the nature of whataboutery, because it ignores the main problem. You're trying to reduce that problem by using other examples to weaken the point. You're dodging the bullet. You're trying to avoid answering the question. Why are you ducking why this is a huge issue and addressing it?
And situations like Zarco are the wrong one ones to hit us with the whataboutism. He got called out for it. He changed his behavior.
Yeah.
Valentino Rossi wore the headband. You know why Valentino Rossi wore the headband? He's riding for Japanese companies for all but 2 years of his career.
Right. He's not got a Chinese sponsor threatening to pull money or cut his jobs. It's not a comparable situation. It's clearly not the same. And if you're lacking the nuance to realize that, you are just as ignorant as Grassini are, who laid out that unfortunate act in the first place.
Well, because you're not trying to justify, you're groveling for a gotcha moment.
Why can't we just sit down and acknowledge our mistakes as human beings sometimes and address these problems rather than trying to bury it or nip it in the bud by using other examples to try and mitigate? You're trying to pull a gotcha, and I can't stand it. I will almost always respect you more when you acknowledge your mistake rather than trying to play down why what you think you did wasn't as bad. Cancel culture is not a real thing. I need to point this out to people, okay? There are plenty of heinous people out there in the world who've gotten away with horrible things and get to walk on as if nothing happened, okay? I promise you, there isn't a lightning bolt outside your house ready to strike if you admit you fucked up on something. I promise. Much more people are going to be more inclined to give you the benefit of the doubt, or to at least hear you out if you just accept you screwed up. It happens. No one's perfect. No one bats 1,000 in this game of life. I've used many examples before. The two biggest F1 drivers right now, one of them said racism is complicated back in 2020. The other one, ask him why he hasn't got an Instagram post before 2018. If you know, you know. But these are still people that are universally revered by their fan bases. And there's a good reason for that, because they will turn a blind eye. They will give them a pass. Acknowledge the fact you screwed up. And Grassini needs to do better. Their PR is woeful. It is trash. How have you done this twice? Honestly, in the space of 3 months. It's baffling that one of the most likable teams on the grid, in the paddock, female owned with Nadia Padovani, tremendous, hearty, heartwarming story of the team and how she's taken the reins from the late Fausto.
They've had the best and worst PR all year.
Yeah.
They're laughing, jumping around, dancing when Mark is on the podium. They're posting Ava memes.
Yeah.
Pilot the Ava mark, or Alex will have to do it again. Unfortunately, that's been balanced out with 2 catastrophically bad PR situations.
It's just baffling that it's even gotten to this point.
And the issue is within the house. They have control over it.
And they've not acknowledged any of this, or even they've not apologized for any of it. That's, if anything, they're trying to deny it's even happened. Which is just baffling.
If the money was just resting in your account, it's about to not be resting in your account.
They need to address this, and quick. Otherwise, it's going to severely compromise them as a team, one way or the other. If it's Manuel Gonzalez losing his job, that's a damn good rider, a top 8 rider in the field that Grassini are about to lose. If it's the other way around, they've just lost the title sponsor, and that is at least 6 figures. That's significant money. And let's be real here. Moto2 and Moto3 teams are not swimming in cash. No. They are resorting on pay riders. They've been living on Dorna handouts for a long time. These teams, besides Mark VDS, they're not swimming in cash. Okay,
they never have been. It's the nature of junior motorsports, whether it's on 2 wheels or 4.
You're losing money. You're losing money to be there. You're trying to mitigate the losses so it's worth running in the long run. The last thing you want to do is lose a title sponsor, especially one which is prepared to put more into the pot to grow their presence in the overall market of bike racing right now. It's stupid. Grassini have fucked up rawly, and they need to address it. And the quicker the better. Hopefully, by the time this goes out, they'll have done something about that, and we'll follow it up on our next MotoGP episode. But before we go, wanted to give one big shout out as well. We'll do the calendar talk next time around because we're already at 55 minutes here. But David Alonso, Moto3 world champion, and what an incredible rider he has been this year. His 10th win of the year. He won it. He won the Motegi Moto3 race to win the championship. He walked it off with a win. He's tied the all-time lightweight class win record of 10 wins in a season. Only Valentino Rossi, I think Rossi, Grassini, and Mir are the other three that have had a 10-win lightweight class season, and we still have 4 rounds to go. David Alonso is him. What a rider, Cam.
Running up the score on this field. Himulation, Himbuktu. They tested his DNA. It's 100% Himalayan. He's moving like an invasive species. I could keep going through all 5 Dracula flows to find superlatives for this guy. He is unbelievably good.
It's the best lightweight class season I've ever seen. I know Grassini won 10 of 12.
Remember Pedro Acosta? Remember how good Pedro Acosta was a couple of years ago?
He's better than Acosta was.
Into the weeds. It's gone.
I know he's like half a year older than Pedro Acosta, or 2 years younger, but he was in Moto3. Like, when he won the Moto3 title, he's like 6 months older than Pedro Acosta was. He's better than Acosta was at this point in his career.
Factor here. No, not for that much of a gap. I think he's going to light Moto2 on fire, personally.
He's special. Everything I've heard about this kid says to me that he is a special talent. From what I've heard and seen, he hangs around with all of the big boy riders. I mean, Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia were congratulating him on the way down pit road. They know him. Alonso trains with Marc Marquez, and apparently he's a very inquisitive mind. He's always asking questions, always looking for little bits of advice and feedback. He takes it all on the chin. He's apparently one of the easiest dudes to sit down and talk to about bike racing because for him it just clicks and he gets it.
He for the love of the game.
Yeah.
He loves it. And we've got our current set of Bozo Gene owners / aliens. He is going to be a name you hear about for a long time in MotoGP.
He's terrifying. He's Colombia's first ever world champion. It was cool as shit. He bought the Colombia and the Spanish flags. I know he was born in Madrid, so I mean technically you can make a case that he's Spanish. He chooses to represent Colombia because of his mum. His mother is Colombian. He's Colombia's first world champion. He did it for Yoni Hernandez. If you know, you know.
For Yoni,
etc. And he's a delightful young man. He really is. Like he's one of these guys that is just, he's so disgustingly likable as well. Like the celebrations have been top drawer. Yeah, he broke out a unicycle at Misano a couple of weeks ago when he had win number 9. And
he broke out a mini bike here and crashed, and they put up the official crash graphic. Celebrating. Whoever was in Dorna doing that, raise.
Give them a raise.
The hard cuts. Between the hard cuts to Santi Hernandez over in the Honda garage anytime Mark does something good.
Oh, yeah.
Whoever's running TV direction over at Dorna, big pay rise.
It was his first ever mini moto that he rode as a child. They shipped it all the way out to Japan so he could ride it on the middle of the track after the race was over. His very first mechanic from his junior GP days was there to celebrate him. He was hugging photographers on the track. He was just so
loving
happy.
Everybody.
Everybody got a hug. Everybody got some of this love. He got the Marquez lift and carry celebration when he got back to the paddock. He is a delightful young man. He is a wonderful babyface character that this sport is needed for a while. And as mentioned, Colombia's first world champion, and he's done it with breakneck speed and unbelievable racecraft. If you missed it, go back and watch Qatar's Moto3 race and watch that final lap where he starts in 6th and he goes on to win it. It is One of the greatest final laps I've ever seen on two wheels. The kid is immense.
Dre, he's one of the few people who can almost at will break a Moto3 pack. In a series that is designed for that to not be possible.
Right.
He is exceptional. The kid can ride. Might be in a prediction next year. Maybe.
He's going to be, I mean, I've got to be careful because Moto2 is difficult. We all know it's an incredibly tough class to win straight away. And look, it's a loaded field next year. We're likely going to have like 3 or 4 dudes from his class also moving up. I think there's a good chance that, you know, like he's going to have, you know, Jake Dixon up there next year. Joe Roberts is going to be there. Sergio Garcia is going to be there next year. There's a lot of really, really solid names in this class. So it's not going to be easy. But this kid is such a freak. I think give him half a year.
I'm not saying it because it'll be easy. I'm saying it because he's that damn good. Very rare that we can pencil in a Moto3 rider as a potential rider of the year. I think this year, if anyone was going to submit that vote, this is the year where I would have to give it some thought. He has been exceptional.
I'll be completely honest. I think it's going to be between him and Toprak Razgatlioglu in World Superbikes this year. There's the two dominant forces in bike racing this year because the amount of bozo on display in the top right. I think
Number 18. Fate of the universe on the line. Give me Jet Lawrence.
You are going to fight for Jet Lawrence's corner, and I respect you for trying that.
Really, if you're not nominating one of those 3, what are you doing here? All 3 of them have been beyond extraordinary this year.
It's Jet Lawrence, it's Toprak, or it's going to be David Alonso for me. And it's going to be a tough category because Alonso's probably going to have the greatest lightweight class season ever in his back pocket by the time it's all said and done. Toprak had a historic, never been done 12 race win streak this year in World Superbikes. Good to see him back this past weekend at Aragon, by the way.
We'll leave the source as unnamed, but we're about to find out just how good Toprak is. Oh, we have.
Oh, we found out. Found out.
Everybody found out.
Everybody found out the hard way. Oh boy, a lot of fucking around happened there. But yeah, that'll just about do it for Motorsport 101 this week. We'll be back next week for our full IndyCar season review. We finally got a free week before the action really ramps up to close out the year. MotoGP triple header next weekend. Formula One's got 6 races in 8 weeks to close out their season. And that'll be starting next week at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Big race, big sprint weekend, over 400,000 expected. Going to be a big high-profile one. Can Lando Norris take some significant margin out of Max Verstappen's championship lead? We'll have to wait and see. Again, like I said, MotoGP takes a week out. I'll be back for the Australian Grand Prix at Phillip Island, so we'll be back in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, we're so back.
Phillip Island, yes.
Oh,
yes.
Phillip Island.
Oh.
You go out, you get yourself some Phillip Island in your life.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking forward to that. And if you want to see an early peek of some of my thoughts on IndyCar this year as well, check out the website. I've just finished my full, I want to say, over 12,000 word in total 3-part IndyCar season review on 2024. It was a lot.
Yeah. You know, Dre installed that new water cooler under his keys, purring like a kitten.
Oh my God! Everything is on fire. Etc. Etc. So all of that will be in the next week or so on Motorsport 101. Check it out if you haven't already. Places you can go before we get out of it because we didn't do it at the top of the show. You can follow me at Dre Harrison 101 on X. You can follow Cameron Buckley at cbuckley917 on Elon Musk's failed business investment, which is now unbanned in Brazil because Elon finally paid the right bank. Good for him. You can follow.
God.
You could follow the
It's
podcast.
beyond parody.
It really is. You can also follow the podcast itself on Motorsport _101, where you can now add 200% of more Joe Hendry gifts to your timeline. It's a good time. We're on patreon.com/motorsport101 if you're really lucky, so you can back us financially on Twitter at the $5 level to get early access to all of our content, including early episode releases. You can upgrade to the $10 tier, where you can listen to these episodes live as they go out, as Jason and Goat have been doing all night in the chat tonight. Thank you guys for listening in as ever and contributing. And of course, you can get all of those details and more on our website, motorsport101.com. Listen in if you haven't already. We had 2 shit Grand Prix and we talked for 65 minutes. Go us. Until next time, I've been Dre Harrison. He's been Cam Buckley. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Sayonara.
You know, if the racing on track isn't going to give us stuff to talk about, the teams being insensitive assholes will.